So, Billy Graham, can you hear me? I have no idea about Kathy said I blacked out. All right. Well, let me start again. Today, Billy Graham was lie instead, laid instead. How do you say it? Uh, his corpse was put in the Capitol Rotunda. How's that? Let's just put it the way it is, in a box. Why he was there, I have no idea. This is supposed to be a separation of church and state in our Constitution. And to see these slobby, mostly white people standing there in the presence of a dead anti-Semite, among other things, it makes no sense to me at all. Now, no, I don't want to judge Billy Graham only by his anti-Semitism, but the reason it stands out is because his Messiah was a Jew. How do you be well, here's what he said. Graham's closest relationship with a president, and he had relationships with just damn near all of them going back to Truman, but his closest relationship was with the paranoid schizophrenic Richard Nixon, who another war criminal that occupied the Oval Office. And of course, Graham tried to disavow Nixon later on when he said that Nixon misled him about the Watergate scandal. But Nixon and Billy Graham were caught on tape in 1972, part of Nixon's paranoia. He taped everything. And Nixon aide H.R. Haldeman, when he got out of prison, first mentioned Graham's anti-Semitic remarks in a book that Haldeman, wrote in 1994. And Graham strongly denied the quotes that Haldeman had in the book. But then audio tapes from the Nixon White House were released in 2002. And Graham could be heard referring to Jews as pornographers and agreeing with Nixon that the U.S. media was dominated by liberal Jews and could send the United States, quote, down the drain, end quote. Graham said to Nixon on this tape, quote, they, referring to the Jews, they're the ones putting out the pornographic stuff. The Jewish stranglehold has got to be broken or the country's going down the drain, end quote. Graham also confided in Nixon that Graham, hid his true feelings about Jews from the Jews. Graham said, quote, I go and I keep friends with Mr. Rosenthal, who was then the executive editor of the New York Times, and people of that sort, you know, and not all the Jews, but a lot of the Jews are great friends of mine. They swarm around me and are friendly to me because they know that I'm friendly with Israel. But they don't know how I really feel about what they're doing to this country. And I have no power, no way to handle them. But I would stand up if under proper circumstances, end quote. After those tapes were released or revealed, of course, Graham went through all the necessary apologies and mea culpas. He said to Newsweek, quote, if it wasn't on tape, I would not have believed it. I guess I was trying to please. I felt so badly about myself, I couldn't believe it. I went to a meeting with Jewish leaders and I told them I would crawl to them to ask their forgiveness. Oh, yeah? So in a solemn ceremony, Trump and all the other phony sons of bitches who pretend that they're leaders of this country had a big ceremony in the Capitol Rotunda today for another man who is a total phony, and that was Reverend Billy Graham. It's just incredible. I was thinking when the service was going on, the little bits and pieces that I saw, I was thinking, you know, here you have all these dignitaries, for lack of a better word, let's call them dignitaries, a number of which have the primary job of governing this country. And they are governing this country not for the benefit of the American people, but for their own selfish interests, whatever those interests are. Most of them are liars. Most of them are deceivers. Every single one of them represents what this dead pastor used to tell them they would burn in hell for all eternity for. But there they all stand. The dead pastor who called them hypocrites and liars and skunks and, you know, in so many words. And there are the hypocrites standing there pretending like, oh, we're all so religious. Let's, of course, it's all political theater, especially when you have people like Donald Trump, whose working knowledge of the Bible begins and ends with 2 Timothy. Was that what it was? 2 Corinthians. Oh, my God. But the part that was most offensive to me was, why were they doing this in the Capitol Rotunda to begin with? He's only the first religious person, Billy Graham, to be given that honor. The tradition began with Kentucky Senator Henry Clay in 1852, and most recently for the late Senator Daniel Inouye of Hawaii in 2012. And then there's this: remains of unknown soldiers from World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam War have been granted the honor, as have 10 U.S. presidents from Lincoln to Gerald Ford. Congress granted use of the rotunda for 2 Capitol Police officers killed while on duty. Graham is just the 4th private citizen. The other 3 are Pierre Charles L'Enfant, planner of the District of Columbia; J. Edgar Hoover, the cross-dressing, hypocritical, murderous son of a bitch who put an awful lot of innocent people in prison and destroyed their lives; civil rights activist Rosa Parks; and then Billy Graham, who today was the first member of the clergy to receive the tribute. Church night. I watched a bit of it. I watched a bit of the phoniness at that service. Trump giving his carefully written speech, probably the last thing that Hope Hicks wrote for him. And those members of Congress who, well, ostensibly they were there to honor a messenger of Jesus. Let's just get religious here. Billy Graham was a messenger of Jesus. That's how a lot of people saw him. He probably saw himself that way. A messenger of Jesus, the Christian Messiah, who had a very simple story to tell, and the story was based on truth, justice, ethical behavior, living a decent life, being kind to other people, taking care of folks who needed it with no expectation of any kind of payback, just a certain understanding that this is what humanity required. You are my brother. I am your sister. I will take care of you. You will take care of me. So I know the message in the Christian religion. I was brought up with it. And I also fully understand the hypocrisy of just about every Christian in America, especially the evangelicals. But especially that crowd of phony sons of bitches who were standing there around the coffin today, those members of Congress, the governing force of the United States, not fucking one of them who would be willing to do anything that their supposed Messiah charged them to do.